this is kind of come off as a rant, but we're going to talk about when does my stuff not come off kind of like a rant? Sorry, not sorry. So here we're going to talk about 4 things. I tried to come up with a 5th, couldn't do it today. 4 things that are not the PTO's job, like ever. Number 1 on the hit list is to pay teachers' salaries or for the art teacher or the specialist or anything kind of like that. That is not your job. That is totally not something that the PTO should be paying. That all specialists like that, so art, music, STEM, library, all that kind of goodness, that is stuff that is essential for kids to learn. It is shown that when kids are involved with music, for example, it boosts math scores. So yes, all of these little extras are really necessities. So your PTO should not be paying for their salaries. Now, if you want to bring in a special kind of assembly person or someone to do a special program, for example, years ago, and my kids never got to experience this because times had changed, but years ago, the lower elementary school where my kids went would bring in a theater company to do a special intensive with the 3rd graders. And I don't exactly know what it involved because, like I said, my kids never got to experience it. But it was a multi-week sort of a thing. Now that's different. So the PTA actually paid for that. And that is totally fine because that is a special event. It's time limited. They're not a member of the school staff. So if they have a staff email address, y'all should not be paying for their salary. You should not be paying for them to come to work. So that is the kind of line in the sand that I'm going to draw. So that's the first one. All right, the second one. Second thing that you are not responsible for doing is to make every idea that a parent comes up with happen. So this comes into play when you have parents either stop you in the hall or stop you in an event and say, hey, I don't have time to come to a PTA meeting, but I'd really like to see XYZ, or y'all really need to do ABC. Whatever it is, you do not have to take that on as a personal failure of yourself or your PTO, and you do not need to make it happen. What you should be doing is kind of flipping the script on them and saying, those are fantastic ideas. I would love to see you explain them more at the next PTO meeting. It is next Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the library. I am excited to see you there. You see how different that feels? So you do not need to be making all of those ideas happen. Sure, you can note them and see if maybe it is a good idea, but unless I firmly believe that people either need to put up or shut up. So too many people have ideas, wishes, desires about what the PTOs can be doing for the schools that is disproportionately outbalanced by the people willing to put in the work to make those things happen. So I kind of would rather do what the worker bees will do. The people putting in all the hard work, whatever they want to make happen for the school should really be given a priority over the wishers and the dreamers, but the people who just like to yap, but don't want to like show up and do any of the hard work. Because it is far easier to come up with glorious ideas than it is to make them come into reality. So don't feel any need to be trying to make all of that stuff happen. That's not your job. If they want to see it happen, they need to get involved and put in the work. Similarly, the third thing that is totally not the job of the PTO is to cater to every desire, whim, will of the teachers. You are there to support the entire school community. The teachers and staff are part of that school community. They are not the exclusive part. They're not the majority stakeholder that needs to be kept happy. For example, something that happened in the past is that in my school district is that there was a contract negotiation between the staff and the school district. Got a little heated. They were mad. There was talks of striking. Cool. I mean, not, but yeah. And so a couple teachers who weren't exactly clear on that boundary of what the PTO's job was came to me and said, well, can't you do something? Can't you say something? Can't you go to the administration and argue on our behalf? And I was like, ooh, no. I just had to be clear with them. And I said, I understand you're in a tough spot. I understand that this is unpleasant, but that's really not our job. Let me know. Let's talk about other ways that the PTO can help support you. Okay. Because it is not our job to directly advocate on behalf of the teachers for contract disputes. That was really uncomfortable. So that just a kind of a really weird example, but it really not catering to everything that the teachers want to do is really tied to the preceding idea about not having to do everything that parents want the PTO to do. Because at the end of the day, there are always going to be more ideas than there is money or time or space to make those things happen. So you really have to be choosy. And it should be, like I said, the ideas from the people who are willing to put in the work, their ideas developed in conjunction with the principal and the teacher liaison. So the teachers can have input, the parents definitely have input, but it's a kind of team determination. The last thing, and I guess these are all kind of similar, but kind of not, kind of a little distinct in their own way. But the last thing that PTOs should not be doing is becoming the slush fund for the principal. Yeah, no, that's not how it works. So this can be especially tricky if you are not set up as a separate and distinct legal organization. So if your PTO is kind of running everything through the school, or it's like the school has empowered you to do things, but all the money comes back to them. And at the end of the day, all the decisions will come back to them too. And you don't have a separate 501c3, then I would encourage you to kind of become an independent organization so that you do have more autonomy over the money and the decisions that need to be made. So a really good example of how I handled something that had been something it should have been autonomous that wasn't, was back in the day when they used to send out the box top checks. Our school I don't know if they're participating in that anymore because that's the lower elementary school. But at one time, the donation from box tops was quite sizable, but that money was going to the school. And I talked with the principal, and they were using it however they wished, but it was all from the money was generated from the PTO volunteers' efforts. Like they were clipping the tops, adhering them to the sheets. Again, this is back in the day, and sending them in. Like it was PTO money who was paying for the postage to make this happen. And it wasn't much. It was maybe $30 a year to get back $3,000 a year. I think one year it was $5,000, or maybe even more. But it was the PTO time and money and effort that was going into it, but then it was coming right back to the school. The check was. So I said to the principal, I said, hey, is there any way that we can decide where that money is going so that it comes back to the PTO for us to decide? Now we're still going to spend it in the school, but we just want more control over it because we're doing all the work to generate the income. And that principal, without skipping a beat, she goes, oh, absolutely. Like she then saw the logic. So ask for that. That's not unreasonable when you frame it kind of like how I've just set out. The other thing is that sometimes principals don't understand that the PTOs are there to service the entire school, not just their whims. So there are a couple different ways to handle this. I have an excellent article, I think it's excellent, about how not to become a piggy bank for your school and kind of create a grant program. So I will pop that video down in the description below. So yeah, follow that, but really just know it is not your responsibility to pay for everything that the principal wants. Like your PTO is going to have some goals. They may or may not be directly aligned with the principals. So know that conflict might exist and that it is okay. And it is okay for you to say no, especially if you were a separate and distinct legal organization. So there you have it. There are, I know one other thing I wanted to mention. I also have another article about what PTO money should be used for, like what you can use it for, what you can't, because especially if you are a 501c3 tax exempt charitable organization, then there are actually rules from the IRS about what you can and cannot pay for. So you need to be adhering to those guidelines so that you don't lose your status, because that would really suck. So I will also link to that article in the description below. So go ahead and check out those resources. And I hope you have enjoyed this video and that I see you in the next one. Want even more guidance on how to be a stronger leader so you can run a better PTO or PTA? All these resources and more are waiting for you at PTOanswers.com.